Hi everyone, my name's Donna Grantis. Thanks for tuning in. This is a Long and McQuaid Learning Series clinic. Today I'll be talking about how to prepare for a performance. And when I say performance, I'm referring to any kind of performance. So whether you're preparing for an arena gig in front of tens of thousands of people or a club gig for 100 people, even if you're preparing for a rehearsal or a jam session or an audition, I consider all of those things to be performances. I'll be sharing with you my perspective and the approach that I take when I learn new material. Thanks a lot to Long and McQuaid for inviting me to be a part of this. Feel free to say hi in the chat box and let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd also like to thank D'Addario Canada, PRS Guitars, Trainer Amps, and Yorkville Sound, Empress Effects, TC Electronic, and Game Changer Audio for incredible gear and support over the years. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I picked up my brother's acoustic guitar when I was 13, and I checked out the tab for Stairway to Heaven and was totally hooked. I was really inspired by Hendrix, Angus Young, Eric Clapton, Santana, Jimmy Page, and Jeff Beck. And I was interested in learning about who their influences were, and that's how I got into learning about the blues. And I did a deep dive in learning about the music played by B.B. King, Freddie King, Albert King, Aretha Franklin, and Buddy Guy. One of the things that really appeals to me about the blues is that it's very improvisational. I've always been very interested in improvising. It's something that has always brought me a lot of joy. And my interest in blues and improvisational music led me to McGill University, where I studied jazz guitar performance. Following McGill, I worked as a band leader. I had a jazz fusion trio called the Donna Grantis Electric Band. I worked as a musical director. I was a member of a ton of bands. I played with Shakura Saida, Sate, and Hill in the Sky Heroes. And I worked as a session musician, and I had the pleasure of playing with artists like Cardinal Official, Kelly Lee Evans, Amanda Marshall, and others. And then in 2012, I received an email that said, "Hi, would you like to jam with Prince and his band at Paisley Park, his recording complex?" And it was an absolute dream come true. It was such an incredible experience, and I was given a short list of songs to learn, and then flew down to Minneapolis, and that's where I met drummer Hannah Welton and bassist Ida Nielsen and Prince. We jammed, and I became a member of two of his bands, Third Eye Girl and New Power Generation. And it was an incredible opportunity. I'm an eOne recording artist. I released an album called Diamonds and Dynamite. It's available everywhere. Oh, I should also show you this. This is Plectrum Electrum, the Prince and Third Eye Girl record. I wrote a song called Electra, and Prince rearranged it, and it became the title track of the album, Plectrum Electrum. Such a great honor. This is a single that I released in collaboration with one of my favorite guitar players on the planet, Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. This 7-inch single was released through his boutique vinyl record label. And there are 2 songs from my record on here, Trashformer and Violetta, and Mike plays an incredible solo on the first track and the most amazing sound effects on the B-side. This is available through my website, donnagrantis.com, and through the Pearl Jam web shop. So today, when I talk about preparing for a performance, I'll draw from my experiences throughout my career as a recording artist, a member of Prince's bands, and as a session player. I'll mostly focus on the process of learning new material, but later on in the clinic, I'll also talk about contributing to a project when musical ideas haven't been fully formed yet, so how to add your voice, your sound, and your ideas. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat box, and I'll do my best to answer them. Okay, so basically, I like to break things down into 3 categories. One is technique. How do you play the right notes? And I'll be talking about the challenge of playing something perfect technically. The second category, the second thing that I like to think about is tone, which I think is just as important as the notes that you're playing. So your sound, and I'll go through, I'll do a rig rundown and talk about some of the pedals and effects that I used in Third Eye Girl and the effects and sounds that I'm using now. The third main category for me is feel. So, you can play the right notes, you've got, a good sound. How do you make what you're playing really connect with the audience or express and communicate what you want it to express? I really feel like anyone can learn to play anything if you have a strong interest and passion in learning a song, if you put the time in and follow the process that I'll demonstrate, and if you maintain a really analytical approach to critiquing and evaluating your playing. Okay, so let's get into it. We'll start off with technique. So I think the first main challenge in learning how to play something is to play it as slow as you need to in order to nail it. From there, little by little, speed it up. So mentally, you're trying to commit, a musical phrase to memory. And from there, I think it's a matter of repetition to really lock in that muscle memory. I think the skill of listening to a song and being able to transcribe it by ear and figure it out on your own is just invaluable. The more you do it, the better and the faster you'll get at it. I'll demonstrate. I'll demonstrate something. So there's an app that I think is great. It's called Audio Scrub, the remix edition. Looks like this. And before this app existed, I actually had a physical black box, and it was called a variable tempo constant pitch phrase recorder. And I remember the first thing that I ever transcribed when I was a teenager was a really fast Joe Pass jazz song called How High the Moon. And it took me 4 hours to transcribe 4 bars. So for context, years later as a session musician, sometimes I was called, to play on a gig, and I had to learn, say, 30 songs in 2 days. Or with Prince and Third Eye Girl, we were learning, I'd say about, 5 or 6 songs a day. We were playing like 6 days a week, day and night. We'd usually go into Paisley around 2 in the afternoon, and we were given a list, say of 5 songs to learn. We had to transcribe them, rehearse them, and then perform them that night. So I'll give you an example of a tune. This is a song off my record called Elsa. And with this app, Audio Scrub Remix Edition, you can loop a particular phrase and slow it down. So if you find that, there's a musical phrase that's just really fast, or maybe there's an odd timed signature and you need to slow it down to really understand it, something like this is great. So check this out. Okay, so that's sort of unusual timing. That's I think of that as a bar of 7 and 2 bars of 4. So here's how I would count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there it is. So with this app, you can actually slow down the music by 30%. Now say I go to 60%. Then little by little, bump it up to 70%, 80%, 90%, until you get it up to speed. So check this out. Here's 80%. 90%. 100%. One of the things that I think is amazing about using an app like this, as opposed to learning something, off of tab, or even working with a metronome, is that there's so much valuable information that you don't, that isn't always expressed, on a page. So details like which notes have the most emphasis. Do any notes have maybe a 1/4 degree bend? Is the phrasing legato or staccato? How short? All of these little details. For example, compared to versus, compared to that. Those little nuances make all the difference. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Sometimes technique can feel quite difficult to keep consistent when nerves kick in, shaky, sweaty hands, etc. How would you suggest preparing for that? That's from Lindsay. I experienced that during my first audition. One of the first times I played in front of people was my audition to McGill University. And it totally caught me off guard. I was playing a classical etude, and it just totally surprised me. I think the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I think that at a certain point there are so many things to think about during a live performance that sometimes you don't even have time to be nervous in a way. Like, for example, playing arena gigs with Third Eye Girl. I remember just being on stage thinking about, are all of my pedals dialed in correctly? Is my tuner on? Where's the set list? Where are my extra picks? Am I hearing everything okay out of the side fills? And then before you know it, the show starts. So I would just keep playing in front of people, and I think it'll get easier. Okay, any techniques or exercises you'd recommend for learning how to move up and down on the fretboard? Yeah, sure. So for moving up and down. Okay, so sometimes when you're first learning how to play, it's really common for guitar players to learn, say, like a pentatonic scale, right? This is, say, A pentatonic. But how do you move all over? What I like to do is practice playing from each root note to the left and right within one octave. So, for example, here's a root note. I'll play an A. Here's two roots, two A notes. Here's the octave to the right of my original root and to the left. So I visualize how those note choices look over here, as well as here. If you do that with every octave grouping, so you'll learn how to play a particular scale or sound to the left and right of each root note. That should really fill in a lot of gaps and connect things. You could also play on one string instead of playing on one section of the guitar. So you could play that scale just on one string, and that would force you to move horizontally instead of vertically. Do you still use your E-bow? Yes, I do, and I'll demonstrate that when I talk about tone, which is actually the next topic. So I think tone is as important as the notes you're playing. Every part of your chain contributes to your sound. Your hands, pick, strings, guitar, the wood, pickups, cables, pedals, amp settings, all of it. Now, of course, I think great players can make any piece of gear sound amazing, but it does all play a part in sculpting your sound. I'll give you a rig rundown of what I like to use. I like to use Delrin 0.7 millimeter picks. This is a PRS custom shop guitar. It's based off of a Mira semi-hollow body, except it's made out of Carina wood, which is a really bright wood. Has maple neck and a whammy bar. Strings, I like to use 10s, and most of the time I use the D'Addario NYXL strings. I think they sound great. They feel great. They're really consistent. They stay in tune. That being said, sometimes I like to change things up too. Sometimes I find, playing a new guitar can be really inspiring, and I'll be inspired to play some new musical ideas, and I feel the same way about strings. Sometimes I'll put Pro Steels on, which are really bright sounding. Sometimes I'll go for the pure nickel strings, which have a more mellow tone. I like to use D'Addario and Planet Waves American Stage cables, and today I'm playing through a PRS Archon amp. So here's a picture of the pedal board that I used when I played with Prince and Third Eye Girl. So there are 3 interconnected boards of 21 pedals, and one of the challenges with Third Eye Girl was, we were such a small group. It was just the 4 of us: bass, drums, guitar, and Prince was singing and playing either guitar or keys, so a 4-piece, and we played songs that spanned his entire catalog from his first record up to the most recent and new material. So it was really important. We wanted to sound huge, like a freight train, and I wanted to make sure that my sound would really complement his. So I'll do a quick rig rundown of some of these different effects. I had a Ernie Ball Jr. volume pedal that allowed me to use my foot to control volume swells, which now I don't have that on my current pedal board, but I would just use my volume control on my guitar. That kind of thing. I had a Eddie Van Halen Wah, although right now I'm using a Crybaby 95Q. The reason why I really love this pedal is because it's you can activate it as soon as you press down. There are a lot of wah pedals that you actually have to fully engage and click on a front switch in order to turn them on. So with the 95Q, I can just immediately start wahing. I had a line 6 delay. Right now I use a pedal called an Empress Echo System. It's pretty amazing because there are 35 presets. So, for example, I'll demonstrate the 5 presets that I currently have. I have one that's very ambient, and I use a very ambient delay when I play with my EBow. I've got sort of a basic delay with about 5 repeats that decay in volume. A backwards effect, kind of like the effect that Hendrix uses on the Castles Made of Sand solo. Something that's a little more pronounced. And then something that's a bit psychedelic for sort of psychedelic jams. I had a Qtron envelope filter, which is similar to a wah, a Octron 2 that is one of my favorite pedals. There are 3 different octaves that you can engage, and you can control the volume of each. I had a micro boost, which boosted my solos so that they could really cut through. A vortex flanger, which was used in Purple Rain. A Boss BF3 flanger that can mimic the sound of like an airplane taking off, which is pretty cool in solo sections. That kind of thing. Tuner, of course, a ring modulator, which can create some really dissonant harmonies. A reverb pedal, and I have a Digitech whammy that I set to make harmonies of fourths and fifths like this. So getting back to preparing for a performance, keeping in mind all of these different tones, with every guitar part that I learned, there was also a corresponding sound that would match. So, for example, in the song "Dreamer," when I hear that tone, I think about drive with a lot of sustain, a little bit of delay to make it sound big, and wah. So, for example, that would be something like this. In contrast, when I was learning a song like Kiss, that doesn't even use any effects pedals. But what I do think about is, okay, how can I replicate that super clean tone? So in order to do that, I set my toggle switch on my guitar to the middle position, and I make sure that I have a super crystal clear amp sound. To achieve that, I crank the master to the max or just below max, and then I adjust volume to taste. And then I get this kind of tone. Okay, so we talked about technique, slowing things down, learning the right notes to play, speeding up those musical phrases, committing them to memory. We've talked about sounds, and when you hear a certain part, try to think about, okay, how could I, replicate that tone? What pedals are used? The third thing that I think about is feel. Well, how do you teach feel? It's such a personal thing. I think it's a matter of attention to detail, the conviction that you put in behind what you're playing. And a friend once said to me, I thought this was interesting, that music is 90% gesture, 10% technique. And that's debatable, but I think here's what I think it means. So let's take an E chord as an example. An E chord is like one of the first chords that I think most guitar players learn, right? Well, you can play an E chord so many different ways. And they all sound different and communicate a different feel. I'll demonstrate feel with a funk riff from a band called The Time. It's a song called Cool, and I'll play what I played live. So basically, it's a 2-bar phrase, and it made up like 95% of the song. So I'll demonstrate how, even with the right sound, the right notes, you can really change the feel of this phrase. This is an example of something that's not funky. That last note was too long compared to something that's super short and staccato. That rhythm falls on the last 16th note of beat 3 and ah. And the drummer's snare would hit on beat 4. 1, 2, 3, and up. So by really playing that last note so tight, so short on the of 3, you leave a little bit of room for the drummer to hit that snare on beat 4, and even though it's a small detail, it's just huge in a live setting. Next, these notes. What a difference if I play compared to, right? And then that last note as well. Not as cool as adding a bit of vibrato. That's a fun riff to jam along to that tune with. Question from Wade: do you ever try all-in-one effect boards instead of individual pedals? I haven't, because I really wanted access to all of the sounds like right in front of me, and I wanted the flexibility of combining them in real time. With Prince, like, we had a set list and we never followed it. So we had to be ready to play anything, and I did not want to have pre-programmed sounds in banks that I would be trying to pull up. I mean, sometimes we had, like 2 seconds notice. And so I just wanted to have everything right in front of me. Okay, getting back to feel. Another thing that I think is really helpful in developing great feel is having a strong foundation in the blues. And there are two main reasons. One is because the 12-bar blues form, there's a real structure to it. And, there are times when a vocalist sings and then there's space for you to play. And that, I think, is so important. So, for example, So imagine this, like vocals. Then there's space, and that's your time to play. Vocals. Space. Vocals. Don't play here. Don't step on the vocals. Space. And so when you're in any musical situation, even if you're in an instrumental group, just having the ear to really pay attention to what your bandmates are playing is just huge. If the bass player's playing like a really wicked bass line, then just provide some space for that and play in the pocket. The other thing that I think blues really teaches is how to make your notes count. So as an example, you can get a lot of mileage out of just like 4 notes. So, for example, say I take these 4 notes. I'm on the top 2 strings playing the 10th and 12th fret. That's it. I could play like a whole solo with just those notes. Not that I would play, 4 notes across a whole 12-bar section, but by practicing that, you can really get a lot of mileage out of your notes and really learn how to make your notes count. So I think following this process of focusing on technique, tone, and feel in a really critical way will help with situations where you've got to contribute your own musical ideas to a project. So going through the how to mimic specific tones and deliver those musical lines in an inspired way will help with developing the tools you need to compose your own parts. Are there any other questions? Sean asks, what did you learn from Prince? I learned a ton about confidence, funk music, conviction, listening, work ethic. We used to go into Paisley about 2:00 in the afternoon and leave sometime between midnight and 6 a.m., 6 days a week for years. I learned a lot about having an artistic vision and a really independent spirit in realizing an artistic vision. That's another thing I wanted to touch on, actually, about preparing for a performance that's not so guitar specific. And that is, when you're preparing for a show, are there any other ways you can express your artistic statement other than just through music? So, for example, what does the stage look like? Are there any props? How are the band members positioned on stage? How does the lighting complement the music? How is the light projected? When? On who? Does fashion or wardrobe play a part in communicating your artistic vision? What visuals are incorporated into your live show? Whether it's photos or videos. We even, down to the last detail, the guitar stands looked really cool. The guitar stands were decked out in leather fringe, and it all played a part in really communicating an artistic vision. Okay, a question from Dawn. Donna, what are the biggest mistakes that you've seen new guitar players make when they're performing? Especially if they're singing and playing. I think the biggest thing actually goes back to the feel thing and what I had demonstrated with the E chords. So sometimes, when it comes to new players, say there's like a really heavy, intense part of a song, then if you're just going like this, that's not going to really come across, compared to putting that conviction into what you're playing. Hey Donna, any advice for new funk players? Any particular formula? I would say transcribe a lot of Prince and Sly and the Family Stone and James Brown. One of the main things that Prince said to me when I was starting to learn the funk repertoire was he would say, Donna, no value. And that basically means that's referring to the note value. So how notes, can be quarter note, eighth note, 16th note. Well, if you imagine that, a note or a chord has no value, but you still play it, it's just like you've got to play it so short and so tight. So for example, let's see, how about something like, I'm just trying to play. I mean, there are notes that are held for a longer value there. Da da ba ba da da. Super, super short. That kind of phrasing is really important. I have a question. What are your favorite scales and modes? One of my favorite modes is the Mixolydian mode. I like that sound. I like that chord. So that would be, and that also goes back to me just really being a fan of the blues. So the Mixolydian mode, in terms of chord scale relationships, that mode, which is this, like a major scale but with a flat 7, it complements a dominant chord, the 7th chord. So when it comes to playing blues, this is the sound of a Mixolydian scale. I write a lot of songs in that mode. Okay, Trevor Yearwood. Hey DG, considering all the pedal settings and your volume pedals, do you keep a general level with your volume knob? Yeah, I do. So the general approach that I take is to have a really clean amp sound. And then from there, I color the tone with the pedals. And, more or less, I try to keep the volume somewhat consistent, and then use that MXR micro amp to boost my volume if I need to cut through during a solo. So to get a really clean amp sound, the way that I do that is I crank the master almost to the max and then dial in the volume to taste. So that's the sound that I've been playing with so far. And just to demonstrate, I'll do the opposite. So I'll turn down that master and I'll turn the volume way up, and you'll hear how the amp will drive now. It's a lot fatter and thicker. With some amps, you'll also get some fuzz on there. But yeah, I like to have a totally clean, clear tone, and then use my pedals to color the sound. Did you already answer your favorite guitarist as a kid and then as an adult? Hendrix. I was a huge Hendrix fan, and of course Prince. Would you mind sharing who some of the guitarists are that inspire you? Oh, I have so many. For blues, B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Freddie King, Albert King, Bonnie Raitt. For jazz, Bill Frisell, John Scofield, Kenny Burrell, who's really, really bluesy. Of course, Prince, Hendrix, Jimmy Page, Clapton, Jeff Beck. Thanks so much, everyone. Do we have any other questions about preparing for a performance? Okay. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to Long and McQuaid. And I will, I'll leave you with a song from my album Diamonds and Dynamite called Trash Former. I'll play for a little bit. If you have any other questions, feel free to let us know. Oh, here we go with a few more. Do you have an amp preference for clean tone? I particularly like the PRS Archon amps. I think that the clean tone is crystal clear. How exactly did Prince discover you? Through YouTube. There were 2 YouTube videos in particular that he saw that led to my audition out to Paisley Park. One was of a performance during the Toronto Jazz Festival at the Orbit Room, and it was of my jazz fusion group playing a Billy Cobham song called Stratus. And that's a song that he covered, and we covered it a ton with Third Eye Girl as well. And the other video was a performance at an event for PRS guitars called Experience PRS, where I was playing the instrumental song Electra that later became Plectrum Electrum, the title track from our 2014 release. Oh, hey, Nick. Nick Paonessa, an old student of mine. How's it going? Didn't you once tell me that Slash was God? I don't know about that, but I do really like Slash's playing. And, one of the things that really appeals to me about Slash's playing is that I think his playing is rooted in the blues. Do you have any kind of special warm-up just before a performance? Usually what I like to do is, review the material. Sometimes I just play each fret going up the neck, all the way up and all the way down. So really, it doesn't sound good, but just this kind of thing. All the way up and all the way down, and I just touch every fret, and it's something I've kind of always done. But I don't really do, technical warm-ups. I mostly just play songs or improvise. Did you and Prince ever chat about pedals and such? Yeah, we did. We sure did. And it was on his recommendation that I had that super rad looking pedal board made by a friend of mine, Craig Pattison from CP Rig Design, built that board, which one of my techs referred to as the Starship. I admire your confidence and love checking out this seminar. Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any favorite girl bands in your listening rotation you would like to share with us? I would say female artists, yes. Hill in the Sky Heroes, Sate. I love Bonnie Raitt. I used to listen to L7. Donna, how do you like your monitor mix? A bit of everything. Yes, I do. I like to hear a bit of everything. I don't generally like to hear my guitar coming through a monitor. I usually have amps cranked behind me, and then in my monitor in front, I'll take the rest of the band. Do you play bass live as well? From Simon, in the bands you were in. No, I've only played guitar professionally so far, although I do have an amazing Fender jazz bass hanging up right to my right, and I just picked it up and started learning Sneaky Freak by Larry Graham. So good, such a wicked bass line. Talking about Prince, he was really good at the bass as well as on guitar, plus many other instruments. He was the absolute best on everything. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Long and McQuaid. And when you're learning material, I hope you can keep those things in mind. Technique, tone, feel, and happy practicing. Hope you're all doing well, and I'll leave you with a song called Trash Former. This is from my record, Diamonds and Dynamite.
Thank you.